Hello and welcome to this lecture. And in this lecture, we will go ahead and learn how to create a Django app. Now you might think, what exactly is an app? Now we have already created this project, which is the My Site project. And in Django, a project is comprised of multiple apps combined together. So let's say, for example, if you're building a huge website, so that website might contain multiple sections. So for example, your website could have a shopping section, a comment section, a community section, so on and so forth. And these each different sections are called as individual apps. So in order to define these sections individually, you create individual apps for them. So right now in our My Site project, we don't have any app yet. So now we need to make sure that we go ahead and create one. So in order to create an app, you again go ahead, open up terminal, and you make sure that you're into the My Site project. And now once you're into this project, there is a specific command which you need to use to create an app, and that command is called as the start app command. So in order to type that thing in, you need to type in Python, and as I'm using Python 3, I'll type in Python 3 manage.py, and then you need to type in start app. And ahead of the start app, you need to type in the name of the app which you want to build. So let's assume we are building a food app which is going to display information of different kinds of foods. I'll just name my app as food over here. And now once I go ahead and hit enter, it is automatically going to create the app for me. So if you want to make sure if this app is created, you can go back to your IDE or text editor, and as you can see, now we have a new folder over here which is called as food. Now if you open up this directory of food, as you can see, it's going to have a bunch of other files as well. So right now we have the init.py, and the purpose of init.py is to basically tell Python that this particular directory, which is food, is actually a Python package. Now there are other files over here as well, but for now we are going to just talk about the views.py file, which is this file right here. Now if you have a look over here in this file, it says create your views here. So now we can go ahead and create your views over here. But first of all, you need to understand what exactly do we mean by views. So as the name of the file suggests, a view is nothing but what content your user is going to view. So let's assume you want to display some kind of a message like hello world to the user. You need to go ahead and write a view for that particular thing. So let's take a simple example. Let's say you want to display hello world. So for displaying that to the user, you need to write a specific view in here. So you cannot directly just go ahead and type in hello world over here, because that's not going to work. Instead, there is actually a proper method to write a view. So a view can be written as a Python function. So as you all know, a Python function looks something like this. You have def, then you have the function name over here, and then you go ahead and just define a bunch of code in there. So we are going to do the same thing to write a view here. So let's go ahead and type in def to state that this is actually a function. And now as we need to name this function as something, I'll type an index here. And whatever name you give to this particular function actually becomes the name of your view. So even though this is technically just a Python function, we call it as view in Django. Now just like a normal function, it's also going to accept a parameter, and in this case the parameter which this view is going to accept is going to be the request. And now what this view does is that it takes up this particular request and it sends back a response. So I'll type in return, and the response which we need to send here is going to be the HTTP response. So I'll type in HTTP response, and now to this particular response we can pass some text like hello world. And I don't know, for some reason we do have some error here. So now once we go ahead and save this code, everything is fine. But there is one main issue with this particular view, and that is we have not yet defined the HTTP response. So now we need to import the HTTP response from Django.http. So I'll type in from Django.http import HTTP response. Now you might be a little bit confused about what exactly is happening over here. So if you recall, I earlier mentioned that Django is actually used to program servers so that they can handle the incoming request and send back an appropriate response. So this is exactly what's happening over here. We are defining a view, which is nothing but a function, and that function is going to accept the incoming user request. And it's going to send back a particular response, which is going to be an HTTP response. And whatever we pass in here is going to return back as a response. Now this thing right here is called as a view, and you can have multiple views over here in your views.py file. So all the views of your food app are going to be contained in this particular file. So now we have successfully defined this particular view, but this view now needs to be attached with a URL. So for example, we have written this view, but how exactly can we access this particular view on our website? So you need to open up your website, you need to type in some URL, and depending upon that particular URL, hello world should be displayed over here on your web page. So how exactly can we do that? So now we need to make sure that we link this particular view to a particular URL. Make sense? So now let's go ahead and learn how to do that. So now how exactly do we tell the server that we need to attach a URL with this particular view? So for that, we simply go ahead and create a new file in the food directory and call it as urls.py file. So as you can see, this urls.py file is currently empty, but if you'll notice that we also have a urls.py file over here as well. So if you go over here, as you can see, it actually has a bunch of code in here. So these are the comments and you can ignore that, but this is the main code which we will be talking about. So if you have a look over here, we have something which is called as a URL pattern. So what this URL pattern does is that it matches up this particular path with the incoming request. So now here we have a path which is called as admin. So what this means is that whenever you open up a browser and whenever you type admin, something is going to eventually happen. So in order to test that, let's go ahead and let's start up a server by typing in python manage.py run server. And now let's go to our server here. So right now we are into our server, and now if I go ahead and type in /admin and hit enter, as you can see, we are redirected to this particular page, which is the Django admin's login page. So how exactly did this particular thing happen? This happened because the URL path for admin is actually configured. So now what we need to do is that we also need to configure such a path for this particular view as well. So how exactly can we do that? So what we will do here is that we'll go ahead and have a bunch of code in here. That is, we will define URL patterns in here. So in the upcoming lecture, we will go ahead and write in some URL patterns in this particular file and connect it with this particular view. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.